Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Weekly Pitch. This is our first episode since October. It has been a while. A lot of us have been pretty busy, but it's good to be back. I'm Matt Price, coming to you from my apartment in Chicopee, which is in Western Massachusetts. And a lot's been going on in sports. You know, we had the NBA, we had the NHL, the NFL is almost back. Of course, we have Major League Baseball. Of course, when there's sports, there's also controversy. And the controversy we're talking about today is something that we honestly have never seen before, and that is a broadcaster being suspended for something that was factually correct. Now, I'm going to introduce my panel in a second, but first I want to explain what happened here. So we're talking about Orioles play-by-play announcer Kevin Brown. He has been calling games for Baltimore for a couple of seasons now. And he is a great young broadcaster. I mean, he knows his stuff. In a game, just before a game on July 23rd, when the Orioles were taking on the Rays, the Orioles had taken the first two of the first three games. So they were going for a series win. And he was just pointing out in pregame comments on live television that the Orioles have had trouble winning games or series at the Trop, which is where the Tampa Bay Rays play, Tropicana Field. And he was just pointing that out. The Orioles ended up winning that game. They won the series. They got sole possession of first place. But ownership, from what we understand, allegedly did not like those pregame remarks, even though they were factual and Brown wasn't trolling the team at all. And that is just totally disgraceful what ownership did. And we are going to talk about it right now. So with that, I want to welcome in my panel for this week. And it's so good that we're going to have this panel because it doesn't get better than this. I'd like to welcome in Dean Gutic and Jackson Roberts. Guys, such a pleasure to talk to both of you on a topic that we've basically never talked about before because I don't think we've ever seen this before. Jackson, it's good to have you back. Dean, first ever appearance on the Weekly Pitch. How are you guys doing, by the way?
Lead it off, Jackson.
All good. Thanks for having me, Matt. Yeah, it's obviously a very pressing issue in the, not just sports broadcasting world, but the sports world.
Absolutely. And by the way, from what we understand, this is a very beloved broadcaster who's really been making a name for himself throughout the past couple of years. Dean, I want to start with you because you are someone who follows Baltimore sports. So you've watched the Orioles for years now. When you first heard this news, which apparently came out yesterday, because from what we understand, Brown hasn't been on the air since that July 23rd contest, what was your immediate reaction?
Well, first off, I want to say thanks again for having me on. It's an honor to be around a great panel. And second, I'll be honest with you, and I actually feel really embarrassed to say this. I'm not surprised. I'm really not. When us Oriole fans have seen this time and time again of the true character that is John Angelos. There's Oriole fans, including myself, that have wanted this owner to sell the team year after year. There's been the Masson lawsuits. There's been the team trying to get out of Baltimore to go to Nashville. Obviously, Gary Thorne, that situation. Now, Kevin Brown. The stadium lease has been another topic with the Orioles. So, I mean, this is ownership that has not ever been really invested in this team. This is ownership that has had a ton of controversy. My personal opinion, I would say if the Oakland A's didn't have Fisher, I would say the Angelos family would be the worst owners in baseball. I mean, these are guys that don't really care about the Orioles. And this is sad because, first off, as obviously someone who graduated a few months ago, sports media major, you dream of being a broadcaster, obviously. I would love to call games for the O's. And seeing this, I'm like, I'll throw a little jab in here if you don't mind, Matt. I was going to say, God forbid what I say on this podcast. Hopefully I don't get suspended or caught by the Angelos family. But Yeah, I mean, like a kid like me wants to do these type of jobs, and now you have to worry about upper management, someone like Angelos that'll, you know, hey, we're going to suspend you for this amount of time. And granted, he will be coming back this Friday. It was reported by Awful announcing almost a half hour ago. It's like he should have never been suspended. There's nothing wrong with spitting out factual information. And the graphic was up there too at the same time. He's reading off the graphic. And I didn't think this was a jab. I'm like, no, I think he's showing everyone this team came a long way. They used to be the bottom of the barrel in the league. This is a team that, as an Oriole fan, I hated watching them play in the Trop. That they would just never win in the Trop ever. It was a struggle. Now they finally have. It's scary as someone who wants, is into broadcasting. Scary as a fan, but also not surprising because again, this is the Angelos family. This is honestly right up to alley with what they do. Is what I'm trying to say. And I feel bad for the players. I feel bad for the players. I feel bad for the fans. I feel bad for even Mike Elias, guys like Mike Elias who have tried to build this team from the ground, managers like Brandon Hyde who have changed the culture, Adley Rutschman. The Orioles have a winning record since Adley got called up. Adley and Gunnar have changed the Oriole dynamic. And yeah, it's all going to be changed because the Angelos family has stepped in. And that's what bad owners can do. Doesn't matter how good you can be. If you have bad owners, that just overshadows everything. So it's scary, but I'm honestly not surprised by it, which I feel really sad to say.
Yeah, and you really touched up on a lot of good points. And we're going to touch up on the controversy regarding the Angelos family in just a moment. But Jackson, you are a sports broadcaster yourself. I mean, you did all this work in ICTV and radio over at Ithaca College. You are currently sports anchor and reporter over in Rochester, New York right now. From out of all your years, whether it was yourself broadcasting or being with other colleagues or just watching or listening to broadcasters on television and radio your entire life, we've heard, broadcasters being fired or suspended for something inappropriate that they said, whether it was a slur or some kind of vulgar remark that they've made. But have you ever heard of a broadcaster getting suspended, in this case, suspended or fired for saying something just to make a point and not trolling a team? Have you ever heard anything like this?
No, I haven't. That's why it was so surprising at first. And you'd think in a year where the Orioles are 28 games over 500 and have control of the AL East, this is the last thing they would want. Because, as Dean touched upon it a second ago, you could have everything there and be in such a good spot, but all it takes is one, single swift stroke by ownership. And, he used the perfect word that could be overshadowed. I haven't seen anything like it. It might exist, but it is definitely unprecedented nonetheless. Just simply stating a fact, stating facts at the end of the day, and doing his job. And I think that is probably the most alarming part of it all, because it's what he's supposed to be doing, and you get punished for it. And I think the suspension was indefinite at first. Thankfully, it was short lived, although it never should have been such to begin with. To answer your question directly, no, I haven't seen anything like it.
And this is something that's really alarming too, because Michael Kay, and I want to say for the record, there have been so many announcers, especially yesterday, that have come to the defense of Brown, and rightfully so, because even if no matter what teams you call games for, you are all one big family. You're all in sports media, you're all in sports broadcasting. Dean, you literally mocked what Jason Benetti, the Chicago White Sox TV announcer, did yesterday. That was mock, the Orioles suspending Brown in the first place. But we heard Michael Kay literally say on his radio show just hours before the Yankees played the White Sox that, if you're going to fire Brown, why aren't you firing the producer who made the graphic? Why aren't you firing the director or executive producer, whoever was involved in putting that little segment together? even though no one should have been suspended in the first place. Jackson touched up on that. Dean, even though no one should have been suspended, and we can all agree on that, do you think ownership definitely crossed a line for sure, like an extra line maybe, by not suspending anybody else because that graphic was approved and put on the air?
No, I'm actually very glad you brought that up because I saw this last night where someone said, if you're going to suspend Brown, you might as well suspend the whole production team for even putting that up in the first place. And I thought, yeah, I mean, if none of that is put up, you can definitely make the argument Brown doesn't say any of that. But at the same time, I'm not defending Angelos. I agree that Brown did nothing wrong, but if you're going to do something for one person, you're going to have to do it for the whole team. I mean, you shouldn't be just suspending Kevin Brown for doing his job. And like I said, it's just awfully wrong. I think they definitely crossed the line. The same White Sox announcer you mentioned earlier, Matt, said that out of all the things that I've seen in this league, I think it was either White Sox or Yankees, someone said last night, of all the things that I've seen in the league, this is definitely up there for one of the nuttiest moments in baseball announcing. And I was like, yep, I don't think I've ever seen someone get fired or not fired, excuse me, suspended for spitting factual information. I mean, it's an action of a thin-skinned owner. And, as Tim Mirabito, a professor from the college, said on Twitter, disgraceful. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Sorry, my microphone was muted. My apologies, but you're right. It is disgraceful. And shout out to Professor Tim Mirabito for saying that. He that one word is basically all of us this week for what the Orioles did. I want to touch up on the controversy that you mentioned, Dean. And Jackson, I'm going to bring this over to you. Gary Cohen spent at least a minute yesterday or on a Tuesday's telecast when the Mets took on the Cubs. And he talked about how this was an absolute disgrace. Like, he was absolutely shocked and saddened by what happened. And you could tell, even though he couldn't yell on the air, he was angry. You could see in his face that he was angry. He mentioned how the Orioles did something similar with John Miller. For those who don't no, John Miller, longtime Major League Baseball announcer. He announced the Orioles back in the 90s, but he used to be a voice of Sunday Night Baseball. And for decades now, he has called games for the San Francisco Giants and still calls games to this day. I'm going to read something to you, and then, Jackson, I want you to respond because this is what Gary Cohen was referring to. So he signed a contract directly with the Orioles, and while the broadcast rights eventually moved to rival station WBAL, Miller remained their primary announcer through 1996. So he was with the Orioles for a little while. At the end of that 96 season, don't forget, 96, the Orioles were still a good team that year. They were a very good team. They made the ALCS against the Yankees. Orioles owner Peter Angelos at the time, displeased with Miller's often candid commentary on the Orioles' play, declined to renew his contract, citing a desire for a broadcaster who would, quote unquote, bleed more orange and black. And ironically, Miller is doing that just with the other orange and black team, the San Francisco Giants. So Miller returned to the Bay Area and joined his hometown Giants after that. Can this ownership family not take any kind of negative critique of a team, even whether they're doing good or bad or trying to turn a statin around? Because I've never seen ownership actually, be displeased with that. I mean, they have to understand not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Don't you agree, Jackson?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are a broadcaster for a team, and I'm glad you brought the Miller thing up. I mentioned before I wasn't sure if this kind of thing had happened. That did jog my memory. John, of course, as you mentioned, didn't have his contract renewed. And in my opinion, just as an aside, one of my favorite baseball announcers growing up, you mentioned the Sunday Night Baseball. He's done a great job for the Giants. And, hopefully it seems as if he's enjoying it. And that's great for him. But, it is unfortunate with what happened to him. And I mean, I think it kind of underscores what you're talking about right there. Ownership apparently taking something personally when it's not intended to be personal, or taking valid criticisms the wrong way. And I think when you do that, you kind of mix your emotions, your feelings with just, you know, straight business. And that's troublesome when you do that. It's troublesome for, the morale of your organization, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now I want to just reiterate the graphic and the stats that Kevin Brown was referring to. And I want everyone to pay close attention, because this is allegedly what he got suspended for. So this is the pregame remarks he made July 23rd, just before the Orioles took on the Rays. The last series win the Orioles had at Tropicana Field was between June 23rd and June 25th of 2017. That was, by the way, a year, the year after the Orioles had made the playoffs. Okay. The last 16 series after that series win, 0-15-1, including 15 straight series losses before this season. Okay. This season, the Orioles have 3 wins in 5 games. All right. 2020 to 2022, 3 total wins in 21 games. Kevin Brown is literally pointing out that a team is struggling in a specific ballpark. It's not saying the team is bad. They've just struggled in this ballpark. And keep in mind, a whole bunch of teams have struggled at Tropicana Field. I could think of a variety of factors, whether it's the catwalks or or just because the Rays are the home team and teams usually do pretty well at home, or because you have the roof that makes the ball blend in so easily if it's hit hard and high up in the air. There's so many factors there. And by the way, again, the Orioles won that game. They won that series. So basically, they overcame the numbers. They overcame the odds, and they got sole possession of first place. So, Dean, I transfer this back to you. Do you think now all of a sudden no broadcaster is safe from saying any kind of struggling numbers here, or do you think it's just the Angelos family?
I'll be honest and say if mix of both is an option, I might say that. I think it honestly depends on the owner, depends on the team. If you're stuck with, if you're in Oakland, if you're in Baltimore, I think you would be at risk of a job, especially if you have someone like the Angelos family that is owning it. And, I don't think so. I mean, for the most part, you have, again, this is basketball, but great Ithaca alum, Eric Reed, who does the Miami Heat. I mean, he's doing his thing, but you have, guys like this, Kevin Brown, who, they're just doing their job, and really it's ownership that makes a call. So I feel like now this puts more fear, even like for me, like I said, for someone who wants to get into broadcasting and has graduated, I'm just like, man, now this probably makes other broadcasts say either A, let's not work for this team ever with the ownership they have, or B, I'm scared if I say something wrong, or even if it's not wrong, just say anything, it might come off bad as somebody else who's in charge, and my job is on the line. I mean, this is the situation right now in Baltimore, and there's other people too. I mean, a Masson reporter, Rock Kubatko, has not. I mean, this is not much news, but hasn't tweeted for 18 or 19 hours, which is rare because this is someone that reports everything Baltimore. So now it just feels like there's a gray cloud right now in Baltimore, and I feel like now this makes more people realize, like, either A, it depends on the team, or B, it just depends on what I say now, because even if it's nothing that's bad, like what Kevin Brown did. It's honestly scary.
It is scary. And I said this to a couple of my colleagues at work earlier today, because they had heard or they didn't hear, and I just told them what had happened, and they agreed that was totally disgraceful and shameful and deplorable what Orioles ownership did. The first thing I thought about was, you hear commentators or sports personalities, whether on television or radio, say so much stuff about whether players or teams being successful or players and teams struggling. Take the New York Yankees, for example. The Yankees are 3 games over 500, and they're in last place. I mean, is the broadcaster not allowed to say that? Let's say, for example, Jackson, because you like the Mets, let's say, just theoretically speaking, of course, Pete Alonso won for his last 22. Okay, are we not supposed to talk about that he's trying to break out of a slump? I mean, this is basic commentary that you hear 24/7. I mean, have the Angelos not watched an Orioles game since taking ownership? Have they not heard Gary Thorne's calls or John Miller's calls or Kevin Brown's calls for the past couple of seasons? Like, Jackson, I think you would agree with me. And as someone who, did call games at Ithaca, whether it was football or basketball or even calling baseball games like at the New York Boulders over in Rockland County, New York, this is straight up commentary. It's straight up facts. These are stats. They're stats.
They are. That's really all there is to it. And it's sad, really, because, I'm going to circle back to the point that I made originally. The Orioles are having such a great year. They're on top of the AL East and seemingly on top of the baseball world right now. It's the kind of thing you would expect from ownership that gets kind of caught up in the success and thinking there's no such thing as any kind of negative portrayal, even if that portrayal is indeed as simple as just stating the facts. That's how it looks to me. Those are the optics. Of course, I don't know if that's what they're thinking or not. But it's how that kind of thing can be perceived easily. But, at the end of the day, it's just facts. That's all it is. You can try and look at this. You can try and hear it 100 different times. You're not going to hear anything new. You're not going to hear anything, insulting. You're not going to hear anything harmful. The only thing you're going to hear is just somebody stating the facts and doing his job.
Absolutely. And Jackson, I want to stick with you for a second because I want to ask, we all know Brown is expected to be back in the booth on Friday, although we all know he shouldn't have been suspended in the first place. I think we've made that point pretty clear. But after this season, we don't know what kind of contract he's on right now, but do you think he's thinking in his mind right now, I don't know if I want to broadcast for this team next year, knowing what ownership did to me? And that because Gary Cohn made the point, and you're a Mets fan, Jackson, you love Gary Cohn. He made an absolute dynamite 100% point in Tuesday's Mets broadcast saying if the Orioles don't want him, there are 29 other teams who do. And I'm not a Red Sox fan, but if he is a follow-up to Dave O'Brien or a backup to Dave O'Brien for the Red Sox or a backup to Michael Kay on the Yes Network for the Yankees or a backup for the Marlins even, they would be lucky to have him. So what do you think? Where does Kevin Brown go from here, Jackson?
I think at the end of the day, if he is hesitant about coming back, he's going to get picked up in a heartbeat. He's just too good of an announcer to, be on the sidelines for that long. I really don't know. If I knew him, I could give you a better idea. I think it can be tough to play that game. But, if I were in his position, it is the kind of thing that might make me question an organization's compass, the moral compass, or make me question their decisions, at least when it comes to just straight up doing your job. So I think, look, would it surprise me to see him leave or to see another team make an offer that's impossible to refuse? No, not at all. Could I see him riding it out? Could I see maybe this long talk with ownership and maybe, for all we know, they're doing it right now behind closed doors as we tape this, saying, hey, I don't know what we were thinking. We got too caught up in the success we're having this season. Shouldn't have done this. It was more visceral than it was logical. Wasn't logical at all. And now here we are. And, we're sorry. Shouldn't have done it. Won't happen again. Could definitely see that kind of thing happening if the pressure eventually became too big, which it seems like it did just a few days after what was called an indefinite suspension. So I think I could see it going both ways. I could see him sticking it out, or I could definitely see him leaving.
Sure. Dean, I want to get your thoughts on that question as well. Where do you see Kevin Brown going from here, at least after this season? Because as far as we know, he's coming back on Friday.
I mean, listen, I really hope he's sticking around. I mean, us Oriole fans love Kevin Brown. He's one of the best announcers in baseball. I always love tuning into an Oriole game. Besides the team's success, obviously, just to hear Kevin Brown, and I always thought like they have one of the best broadcasting groups in all of baseball. Ben McDonald, Jim Palmer, Kevin Brown. I mean, this is a group that is again one of the best in baseball.
Melanie Newman as well.
Yep. Yeah, her as well. And like it's like this is a group that I never want to leave Masson. Every Oriole game that's watched is you mentioned him at the Trop. There was a call he had which had me off the roof when the Orioles got a double play at the end, and he was like, enjoy the view at the Trop at the very top. And I was off the edge of my seat, and every Oriole fan was happy. And it's like now it's like it's uncertain for him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if if says I want to ride this thing out. Let's try it again with the Orioles, but I wouldn't be surprised if he left. So if I had to predict, I would say this is probably his last season. And I don't want to say that. I think ownership is going to probably have a talk behind closed doors and probably say like, listen, we didn't like what you said. And again, this is me also saying, this is John Angelos at the end of the day, someone who has had controversy, someone who won't take responsibility for what has happened. This is the same guy that said we're going to open the books per se in Baltimore, and they haven't really spent. So I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if ownership still found a way to force him out. So, and I actually have a fear that that's exactly what's going to happen. So I hope he sticks around, but I'm just preparing for the worst considering who's the owner of the team.
By the way, you talk about controversy. This is not the only controversy this year or within the past couple of years, including this year for the Orioles. There was rumors going around that the Angelos family is looking to get the team out of Baltimore, possibly get them down to Nashville or something. And then this year, just before opening day, they fired their PA announcer because he was just making tweets, I would guess, as a sports fan, as a Baltimore sports fan, talking about how the Ravens were doing or something like that, which I think, I don't agree with that firing at all, because that's someone who's taking an Oriole cap off and putting a sports fan hat on and just talking about how another team is doing, not trying to, troll the team or anything like that. So it's just never ending for the Angelos family, it seems. And, Dean, I want to stick with you for a sec, because what's really, really sad, and Gary Cohen also touched up on this, although other announcers have as well, including Mad Dog, Chris Russo, Michael Kay, John Sterling, Susan Wallman. The Orioles have had a pretty special year. All right, going into tonight, there are at least 3 games on top of the Rays in at least as when we are doing this recording right now, which is on Tuesday, the 8th. The episode is going to air on August 12th, today on Saturday. But what's mind-boggling here is, the Orioles have a special season going. And, they're one of the first teams this year to get to 70 wins. This is a young, talented squad. They're put together something really special. They could make the playoffs within next month, their first playoff appearance in 7 years. And this puts a damper on that season. How bad of a position, Dean, do you think the players and the coaches are in right now, knowing that a well-loved broadcaster who, again, did nothing or said something wrong has been out of the booth for a reason like this? Like, what are your thoughts on that part of it?
I mean, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to make the comment of I don't know the players, but these are a bunch of guys that just love to play baseball. So I would say the players are going to still be locked in. But I feel bad for them, And again, I came across this on social media where someone said this is an Orioles ownership management problem. This is not a team problem. And I was like, the sad part is the team's going to get a bad rep because of this, because of who's in charge and runs the show. So I think there is going to be some sort of pressure on the players. And I feel really bad. I listen, this was like the first year as a O's fan. Heading into the season, I had high expectations, felt good, and now it's like 70 wins, 3 games above first place. The Charm City magic is back in Baltimore. The goods and everything is finally making moves at the deadline. It finally made it seem like everything is coming together for the Orioles. And now it's like just like that, it's just take kind of the lights taken away from them. So I feel like there's kind of pressure on the players to kind of get the light back on them. They have a bit, obviously playing the Astros coming up and Mariners in both series. I mean, it's just, again, feeling really bad because the pressure that they have. And this is not their fault at all. I'm not going to blame Brandon Hyde. I'm not going to blame Mike Elias. I'm not going to blame the players. These are guys, Hyde and Elias, that have tried to build a culture, build from the ground, start from the bottom. And these are players like Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson that have even Jordan Westberg, that have come into this team, have gotten called up, and have tried everything to change the culture. And I still will say they have, because this is not the same old Oriole team, but it's like, might not be the same old team, but still the same old ownership, still the same old organization. So, I think there is some type of pressure right now for the Orioles to keep their head up high and push through this whole season.
Absolutely. And Jackson, you have to wonder, let's say the Orioles do make the playoffs at the very least, which headline tops the other? The team that made the playoffs with a very young, talented squad, barely any veterans on that team, first playoff appearance in 7 years, if they were to do that, or the team that suspended a well-liked broadcaster for saying something and doing everything by the book? Which headline tops the other?
I'm going to be honest with you. If this suspension had lasted longer, if it had dragged on instead of come down and then quickly within, the blink of an eye, taken away, I think it would be a bigger headline. But if I'm being honest, with how great of a season the Orioles have had, and when this is happening, there's still about 2 full months left in the season. So there is some time for the Orioles if they continue to play well enough, and there's no reason for me to believe that they won't. For them to kind of bury this in the file cabinet, so to speak. I think that it's going to be a side note by the end of the year. I think, again, if it had been longer, if this had been at least a week, instead of a day, 2 days, then it would have been.
No, it's been going on since
long,
that game on July 23rd. He
Right.
was off the air since that game on July 23rd.
Right.
No one knew why he was off the air, and now we know this week. So he's been on for 2 weeks now.
Right. That's right. I guess let me clarify. What I meant by that is, if we knew right away and we knew he was suspended from the onset, and we knew what had been going on for 2 weeks, instead of just sitting in the dark, waiting around, wondering, and he's been suspended, and it's kind of continuing to drag on. Whereas only now do we find out, and only a day or two later after that, we find out he's going to be back on the air. I know you mentioned, of course, since late July it had been going on, but I think if the Orioles continue to play well enough, at the end of the day, that's what will be kind of the main headline of the season.
So very quickly, this will be the last question. It's for both of you. Quick responses to both of you. Let's say the Orioles win the AL East. All right. And right now it seems they could possibly be on that path. Again, they're at least 3 games up on Tampa Bay at this very moment. But let's say, how when it comes to celebrations, let's say it's on their home field. It's on their home field at Camden Yards. They win the division, and the owners, the Angelos, get interviewed on the field, being asked, how's it feel winning the division, first division title since 2014? Do the fans who are in attendance, do you think they boo the Angelos because of what they did this season? Jackson, I want you to start that off. And again, quick responses.
I'm going to say at the end of the day, again, if they continue to play well enough, it wouldn't be the reason they boo. I think if anything, a lot of fans just don't like the owners, and that's because a lot of them have shown over time, you know, depending on the organization they're in and depending on, the decisions they've made, that they haven't been good decisions. So I think if they are to boo, it wouldn't be for that reason. But at the end of the day, if the Orioles are going to the playoffs after having one of their better seasons in recent years, I think that's going to be the focus.
Your mic is muted.
My mic is off. Sorry, that's the second time that's happened. I hope I do not get suspended for that. But my question to you is, I could see you shaking your head. So yes or no, do you think the Orioles will boo the Angelos in that kind of scenario?
I was going to make a quick joke to you to say when you said my mic was muted. Oh, the Angelos family would be proud of you in that case. They wouldn't be able to hear. But a suspension wouldn't be possible, so there's a solution. But no, I think the fans, Jackson said it best. I don't think the fans would boo because of their decision. It's because of, like I said, the stadium lease controversy, relocation. I think it'd be more so because we don't like these guys. They need to sell the team. I think it'd just be more so of we're just going to boo them because we don't like these guys. But if they have this type of success, I think there's going to definitely be more cheers than boos. And I think Oriole fans, including myself, are going to still rejoice. Because again, like I said, as a Nose fan, I just want the playoffs at this point, man. I've experienced them being at the bottom of the barrel. So I care more about a playoff push right now, but it'll still be in the back of a lot of O's fans' minds that, hey, these are still our owners, still not the greatest people on the planet. So yeah, so I'll say a mixed crowd. I think there will be some boos, but there will mainly be some cheers if they make the playoffs.
Matt, if I could just say one more thing, kind of jumping off
very quickly.
Jumping off of Dean's point, there's so many, as terrible as this is, in the list of things owners do that are bad, it really does get buried in the grand scheme of things. It's terrible. I'm not, trying to dismiss it, but like Dean said, there are a lot of other issues that Orioles ownership has that really would, force fans to focus on that in the grand scheme of things.
No doubt about it. And I agree with both of you. The one thing I'll say, and I think some Orioles fans will definitely boo should that scenario happen. But the one thing I'll say for right now to the Angelos and to anyone defending them, if you think this is okay, you're way off, because sports broadcasters have a job to do. Regular journalists, period, have a job to do. And as someone who's done sports broadcasting and still wants to do it in the future, and to these guys as well, for Dean and Jackson, we know what we're talking about. Broadcasters know what they're doing. They have to say stuff, even if it's stuff that you don't like, if it's stats you don't like. All right. If you're going to suspend somebody for making a factual remark, and it turns out that that particular team or that particular player overcame the odds when it came to that stat, then I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, because, what the Angelos did was classless. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So to Dean, Gutic, and Jackson Roberts, thank you both very much. You're both welcome to come back. Weekly Pitch will be back again very soon. Until then, see you next time, and have a sportacular week.